My fiancée asked me to translate a Chinese topic from her phone. I froze when I read a new message. Same time tomorrow. Don't let him touch you first. She snatched the phone and whispered. I did not expect anything important to happen that evening. That detail matters, because if I had sensed even a little tension, I would have paid closer attention. Instead, I was relaxed in the dangerous way people get when they think they are safe. We had just finished eating. The apartment smelled faintly of reheated food and detergent from a load of laundry spinning in the other room. Nothing felt fragile. Everything felt routine. Alina was sitting on the couch with her legs folded under her, scrolling through her phone with the absent focus she always had when she was half bored. She complained about a topic she had found online, something written in a language she barely understood. She said the comments were getting heated and asked if I could translate the main post so she could decide whether to keep reading it. Her tone was casual, almost lazy. She handed me the phone without looking at me. That moment would replay in my head later. The confidence in it. The lack of hesitation. I took the phone and leaned back, holding it between us so she could see the screen. The topic was long, structured, and written formally. It was not a chat, not private messages, not anything intimate. I started translating aloud, sentence by sentence, explaining context as I went. She nodded occasionally, interrupting once to ask what a specific phrase meant. Everything still felt normal. Halfway through the paragraph, the screen shifted. A notification slid down from the top, smooth and bright, impossible to miss. It was not buried. It was not subtle. It arrived live, while I was still holding her phone, while I was mid-sentence. The name was unfamiliar to me, but the message was not. Same time tomorrow. Don't let him touch you first. My voice stopped without me deciding to stop it. The words did not need interpretation. They did not belong to work. They did not belong to humor. They belonged to a pattern. They implied repetition, planning, physical proximity, and awareness of another man who was not supposed to exist in that sentence. I looked at the screen for a second too long. Alina reacted before I spoke. She lunged for the phone and pulled it out of my hands with enough force that my fingers bent back slightly. She turned the screen toward herself, her body angling away from me, her voice dropping low as if volume alone could contain damage. She told me to stop. She told me it was not what it looked like. She told me not to read into it. Her words came too fast. They overlapped. They were not structured explanations. They were control attempts. I asked her who sent the message. She answered immediately, which was the first mistake. She said it was nobody important. Then she said it was someone joking. Then she said it was taken out of context. Each answer erased the previous one before it could land. I asked her why the message mentioned tomorrow. She said it was a figure of speech. I asked her why it mentioned touching. She said it was sarcasm. I asked her why she reacted like that. She said she panicked because I misunderstood. I told her to unlock the phone and show me the rest of the conversation. Her hands froze. That hesitation lasted less than a second, but it was enough. She shook her head and told me it was private. The word private sat wrong between us. We were engaged. We shared an apartment, shared plans, shared a future that was supposed to start soon. Privacy did not usually enter the room unless something else was already there. Before I could say anything else, the phone vibrated again. It was a call. The name matched the message. She declined it instantly. No pause. No confusion. No checking if it might be someone else. Her thumb moved on instinct, the kind that comes from repetition. I asked her how many times she had declined calls from him before. She did not answer. I stood up. Not abruptly. Not dramatically. I just stood, because sitting suddenly felt wrong, like staying seated meant accepting something I did not understand yet. I told her the conversation was happening now. Not later. Not after she thought of better answers. Not tomorrow. She accused me of cornering her. She said I was overreacting. She said the timing was bad. None of those statements addressed the message. They only addressed her discomfort. I asked her how long. She tried to redirect, asking why I was focusing on a single sentence when I had been translating something unrelated. She asked why I was ignoring everything else that was good between us. She asked why I was acting like this erased years of history. I told her that a single sentence can erase a future faster than years can build it. She told me I was being unfair. The phone buzzed again, this time with a text preview visible from the lock screen. Different wording, same tone. Familiarity. Impatience. She turned the phone face down on the cushion beside her like that would make it stop existing. I asked her to look at me. She did, but only briefly. Her eyes did not hold. They darted, calculating angles instead of expressing fear. That detail mattered. Fear would have meant she had something to lose emotionally. Calculation meant she was already thinking about damage control. She finally admitted the man existed. She said his name was Qley. She said he was someone from before. She said things had never fully ended. She said it was complicated. Each sentence came with a justification attached, as if explanation itself could soften impact. I asked her why she was planning tomorrow with him. She said planning was the wrong word. I asked her why he was aware of me. She said he was not supposed to be. I asked her why he referenced my presence so casually. She said people say stupid things. The phone rang again. She did not decline it this time. She silenced it completely. I realized then that this was not a slip. It was not a message sent at the wrong time. It was not a moment of weakness. It was a schedule interrupting itself. I asked her whether anyone else knew. She hesitated again. That second hesitation was heavier than the first. She said her cousin Vera might have known something. She said it was not serious. She said people exaggerate. I told her to call Vera. She refused. I picked up my jacket from the chair near the door. Not because I planned to leave permanently in that moment, but because I needed air that was not shared. She followed me, blocking the doorway briefly, telling me we should talk calmly, telling me this was not the way to handle it. I asked her when she planned to tell me. She said she had not decided yet. That answer landed harder than any confession. It meant the decision was still open. It meant the engagement was not a promise, but a placeholder. I stepped past her and left the apartment. The hallway felt narrower than usual. The elevator ride down felt longer. My phone buzzed repeatedly in my pocket, but I did not check it. I already knew who it would be from and what it would contain. Explanations, justifications, reframed narratives. Outside, the night air felt sharp. I walked without direction for several minutes, replaying the moment the notification appeared. Not the words themselves, but the timing. The fact that she had handed me the phone without checking. The fact that she assumed control would hold. By the time I stopped walking, one thing was clear. The translation had not revealed a mistake. It had revealed a system running in parallel to my life. And it had done so at exactly the wrong moment for her. That was when I understood that whatever came next would not be slow, quiet, or contained. The confrontation had already happened. Everything after this would only escalate. I did not go far. That surprised me later, because part of me expected to keep walking until the city stopped looking familiar. Instead, I ended up 2 blocks away, inside a cafe I had been to 100 times before. The place was still open late, half empty, humming with low conversation and the mechanical rhythm of a coffee grinder behind the counter. It felt neutral. I needed neutral. I sat near the window with my jacket still on. My phone vibrated again. I ignored it. Then again. Then a third time. The screen lit up through my pocket like a pulse I refused to acknowledge. I ordered something I did not really want and stared at the table until my breathing stopped feeling shallow. I told myself one thing very clearly. I was not chasing explanations. I was not collecting evidence. Whatever this was, it had already crossed the only line that mattered. I was stirring the cup when someone said my name. I looked up and saw Anton standing a few feet away, holding a paper bag like he had just picked something up to go. I recognized him immediately. He worked with Alina, not closely, but enough that I had seen him at office gatherings and casual dinners. He smiled in a way that suggested familiarity, not surprise. He asked if I was waiting for her. The question landed wrong. Not offensive, just misplaced. I said no. He nodded slowly, like that answer fit into something he already knew. He pulled out the chair across from me without asking and sat down. He started talking about work, about a client who was impossible to please, about deadlines. He talked the way people do when they assume they are safe, when they think the room is already aligned. Then he said something that made the air thicken between us. He said it must be exhausting, trying to keep everyone happy. I asked him what he meant. He laughed lightly, waving his hand like he had said something obvious. He said he meant the wedding planning, the work pressure, everything stacking up at once. He said Alina had been under a lot of stress lately. He said juggling things always took a toll. I asked him what things. The smile on his face faltered, just a fraction. He recovered quickly, but not before I saw it. He said he just meant life in general. He said relationships were complicated. He said people made choices that looked strange from the outside. I told him I had just found out about Qley. He did not react the way someone hearing a name for the first time would. His eyes flicked away from mine for a second, toward the counter, toward the door, anywhere else. When he looked back, the assumption in his expression had shifted into something closer to caution. He asked me what exactly I knew. I told him that question answered itself. Anton leaned back in his chair. He lowered his voice, even though there was no reason to. He said he thought I already knew. He said he assumed we had some kind of understanding. He said it was not his place to interfere in personal arrangements. I asked him who else assumed that. He hesitated. Not long, but long enough to show this was not the first time he had weighed whether to answer. He mentioned Vera casually, as if her name belonged in the sentence. He mentioned Lena. He mentioned a couple of people from work who thought it was obvious something was off. I realized then that my role in this situation was not the betrayed partner discovering a secret. It was the last person being updated on a version of reality everyone else had already adjusted to. Anton apologized, but it was the kind of apology meant to smooth discomfort, not repair damage. He said he should go. He stood up, picked up his bag, and told me to take care of myself. Then he left, stepping back into his normal evening like nothing irreversible had just happened. I sat there long after he was gone. When I finally checked my phone, there were 12 missed calls. All from Alina. No messages from anyone else. That detail mattered. It meant she was still trying to control the flow of information, to keep the circle small. I paid and walked outside. I did not head home. I stood on the sidewalk and called Vera. She answered on the second ring, sounding distracted. I told her where I was. I told her what I had seen. I told her what message had appeared on Alina's phone. She went quiet. I asked her how long she had known. She said she never thought it was serious. She said Alina had made it sound temporary, unresolved, unfinished. She said she assumed Alina would choose eventually. She said she thought I was aware there were questions. I asked her why she thought that. She said Alina told her I was not naive. That sentence hit harder than the message itself. It meant Alina had already written a version of me that could absorb this without breaking the plan. Vera started explaining, but the explanations blurred together. They were not lies. They were rationalizations passed down secondhand. She talked about timing, about pressure, about expectations. She talked about how relationships evolved. She talked about how no one meant to hurt anyone. I told her the wedding was off. She did not argue. She just said she understood. I hung up and turned toward the building where Alina and I lived. I did not rush. I did not delay. I walked with the calm that comes when decisions stop being hypothetical. When I opened the apartment door, Alina was standing in the living room like she had not moved since I left. Her phone was in her hand. Her face was flushed, eyes bright in a way that suggested she had already rehearsed several approaches. She started talking before I could say anything. She said Anton had texted her. She said Vera had called. She said people were blowing things out of proportion. She said this did not need to turn into something bigger than it already was. I told her it already was. She told me she felt ambushed. She told me she felt judged. She told me she felt like everyone was turning against her at once. She spoke as if the problem was the speed at which consequences were arriving, not the reason they existed. I asked her whether she had ever planned to stop seeing him. She said she needed time. I asked her whether she had ever planned to tell me the truth. She said she was trying to protect everyone. I asked her whether the wedding date meant anything to her anymore. She did not answer. Instead, she said something that shifted everything. She said the engagement was never meant to trap either of us. She said it was supposed to be flexible. She said people changed. She said I was making it rigid by demanding clarity. That was when I understood the problem was never the message that popped up on her phone. The problem was that we were not standing in the same relationship at all. We were standing in two different interpretations of it, and only one of us knew that. I told her I was canceling the venue in the morning. She laughed once, sharply, like she thought I was bluffing. Then she saw my face and stopped. I went into the bedroom and took a bag from the closet. Not everything, just enough. She followed me, asking what I was doing, asking where I would go, asking whether we could slow down. I told her slowing down was how this happened. As I left the apartment for the second time that night, I felt something settle instead of break. The story had expanded beyond a single moment, beyond a single message. It now involved other people, other assumptions, other compromises made without my consent. And it was clear that whatever came next would not be quiet. I slept somewhere I could not remember the name of, on a couch that smelled faintly of old fabric and unfamiliar detergent. The night did not bring rest. It brought repetition. The notification sound replayed in my head without sound, like muscle memory. When morning came, it did not feel like the next day. It felt like a continuation that refused to pause. I checked my phone before standing up. There were messages from my sister, from my mother, from a number I did not recognize that turned out to be the venue coordinator. Alina had not stopped calling, but she had changed tactics. The last message from her was not emotional. It was practical. She asked whether I had already spoken to anyone and suggested we align before things became complicated. That was the first moment I felt something colder than anger. Alignment was a word used when two sides shared a goal. We did not. I showered, changed, and went straight to the venue. I did not call ahead. I did not ask permission. I walked into the office like someone who still belonged there, because technically, I did. The coordinator recognized me immediately and asked whether Alina was parking the car. I told her Alina would not be coming. She did not look surprised. That detail stayed with me. She said there had been confusion about payments and dates. She said Alina had asked to pause certain arrangements weeks ago, citing uncertainty about schedules. She said she had assumed it was a joint decision. I told her it was not. The coordinator nodded, already typing. She asked whether we were canceling entirely or rescheduling. I told her to cancel. She asked for confirmation. I gave it. She asked whether Alina was aware. I said she would be. When I stepped back outside, my phone rang again. This time it was my mother. She did not ask questions. She told me she had heard something from Alina's aunt and wanted to hear it from me. I told her the truth without dramatizing it. I said the engagement was off. I said there had been another man. I said I would explain more later. She paused, then said something I did not expect. She said she had sensed something was wrong months ago. She said Alina never spoke about the future the same way anymore. She said she thought it was stress. That made it 3 people now who had felt the shift before I did. By the time I got back to the apartment to collect more of my things, the place no longer felt like shared space. Alina was not there. The silence was heavy, but not peaceful. It felt staged, like a room waiting for an argument to return. I packed slowly, deliberately. I did not take everything. I took documents, clothes, items that were clearly mine. I left behind things that would have required discussion. That mattered. I was not erasing the past. I was exiting it. As I zipped the bag, her laptop chimed from the kitchen table. Not because I was looking for it. Because it was open. Because notifications do not ask permission. A calendar reminder popped up on the screen. Dinner, K. Tomorrow. Same time. I stared at it longer than I wanted to. Not because it surprised me, but because it confirmed something structural. This was not a spontaneous affair running parallel to my life. It was scheduled. It had reminders. It had slots carved out like any other commitment. I closed the laptop without touching anything else. I did not photograph it. I did not forward it. I did not need proof anymore. Proof was for people who still needed convincing. When Alina walked in 30 minutes later, she froze when she saw the bag by the door. She asked where I had been. I told her the venue. She asked what I had done. I told her everything. Her reaction was not grief. It was panic. She said I was rushing. She said canceling was drastic. She said we could have postponed. She said decisions like that could not be undone easily. She said I was putting her in an impossible position. I asked her what position she thought I was in. She sat down heavily, rubbing her temples. She said she never promised exclusivity the way I understood it. She said she had been honest about being confused. She said the engagement was meant to give us time, not lock us in. I asked her when she planned to decide. She said she had not set a date. That was the moment it became clear. There was no future in which clarity arrived naturally. There was only a future in which I waited until she chose something else. The doorbell rang. We both looked at each other. She frowned, confused, then glanced at her phone. Her face drained of color before she even moved. I opened the door. Qley stood there, holding a bottle of wine like someone arriving at a familiar place. He stopped short when he saw me. For a second, none of us spoke. The hallway felt too narrow for 3 people carrying incompatible realities. He said my name carefully, like he had practiced it. I asked him why he was here. He said Alina had told him we were taking space. He said he thought this was a good time to talk. He said he did not expect me to be present. I told him I lived there. He looked at her then. Not at me. At her. Waiting. She did not correct him. That silence was louder than the message had been. Qley cleared his throat and said he should leave. He said this was awkward. He said they could talk later. He said he did not want to cause trouble. I told him trouble had already been scheduled. He stiffened. He asked me what that meant. I told him to ask her about tomorrow. His expression shifted. Not guilt. Recognition. He said she had told him the wedding was symbolic. He said she had told him it was about family expectations. He said she had told him I was aware of the situation, that I preferred not to talk about it. I laughed once, quietly, because it was either that or something worse. I asked her if that was true. She said she had simplified things. I asked him if he knew she was engaged. He said yes. I asked him if he knew the date. He hesitated. That hesitation told me exactly how disposable I had been in their version of events. Qley put the bottle down on the counter and said he was not interested in drama. He said he wanted clarity. He said he was tired of being hidden. I told him he would not be hidden much longer. Alina finally spoke sharply, telling both of us to stop. She said this was spiraling. She said people were being unreasonable. She said nothing had actually happened yet that justified this reaction. That was the 3rd time she framed betrayal as a future event rather than an ongoing one. I told her I was done discussing hypotheticals. I told her the engagement was over. I told her I would be moving out fully by the end of the week. I told her she could explain whatever version she wanted to whoever asked. Qley picked up the bottle again. He looked uncomfortable now, not triumphant. He said he needed time to think. He said he did not sign up to be the other man forever. He left. When the door closed, the apartment felt empty in a different way. Not abandoned. Exposed. Alina accused me of humiliating her. She said I had forced a confrontation. She said I could have handled it privately. She said I had destroyed something that could have been salvaged. I told her it was never solid enough to salvage. She asked where I would go. I told her that was no longer her concern. As I walked out with the bag, I understood something that settled everything. The engagement had not failed because of a message or a man or a confrontation. It had failed because it was built on flexibility instead of commitment, on convenience instead of truth. And once flexibility broke, nothing was holding it together anymore. The morning after Qley showed up at the apartment did not feel like an ending. It felt like a release of pressure that had been building for months without my noticing. The silence in the place where I was staying was different from the silence I had left behind. It did not feel loaded. It felt final. I started the day by doing what Alina had avoided for weeks. I made clear decisions. I called the remaining vendors one by one. Not to explain, not to argue, to inform. The photographer confirmed Alina had asked about postponement, hypothetically, twice before. The caterer said she had reduced the guest count estimate recently. The pattern was impossible to ignore. She had been preparing the ground quietly, hedging outcomes without telling me. None of it required interpretation anymore. By noon, my phone started ringing again. Not from Alina. From people reacting to the cancellations. From relatives asking what happened. From friends who had heard different versions and were trying to reconcile them. I told the same short truth every time. There was someone else. The engagement was over. There would be no wedding. I did not add emotion to it. I did not justify myself. Facts traveled faster than explanations. Alina tried to regain control by changing strategy. She stopped calling and started sending long messages. She framed herself as overwhelmed. She framed me as inflexible. She suggested couples counseling, mediation, time apart that still preserved the engagement on paper. Each message assumed the relationship still existed in some provisional form. I did not reply. That silence frustrated her more than anger would have. Qley called once. I answered. He said he felt misled. He said he had believed the wedding was a formality, something Alina planned to cancel once family pressure eased. He said he had not known how close the date actually was. He said he did not want to be part of something that required lying to everyone involved. I told him that was already the case, whether he liked it or not. He accepted that without arguing. He said he was stepping back. He said he needed to protect his own life from the fallout. He did not ask for forgiveness. He did not offer excuses. He exited the situation the way people do when they realize they were never in control to begin with. That left Alina alone with the version of events she had created. Her cousin Vera called me that evening. She sounded tired. She said Alina was staying with her temporarily. She said Alina was angry at everyone, cycling between blaming me and blaming circumstance. She said family members were asking uncomfortable questions. She said contradictions were surfacing. I told Vera I was not interested in managing the aftermath. I said the truth did not need coordination. 2 days later, Alina showed up where I was staying. She did not ask to come in. She stood outside, arms folded, posture rigid. When I stepped out, she immediately accused me of spreading rumors. She said people were judging her. She said her work environment had become hostile. She said she felt punished beyond what was fair. I asked her what outcome she had expected. She said she expected discretion. I asked her from whom. She said from me. That was the last misunderstanding to dissolve. She had never planned for consequences. She had planned for containment, for silence, for a controlled narrative where she could pivot between futures without accountability. I told her I had not shared anything that was not true. I told her I had not contacted her employer or her friends. I told her that once a story involved multiple people, it stopped belonging to any one person. She accused me of cruelty. She said I was punishing her for confusion. She said relationships were not binary. She said people made mistakes. I told her mistakes were accidental. This had been scheduled. She stared at me for a long moment, then said something revealing. She said she had always assumed I would forgive her eventually. She said she thought I was stable enough to absorb it. She said she never believed I would walk away completely. That was the final consequence. Not the canceled wedding. Not the public embarrassment. The realization that her entire strategy had been built on an incorrect assumption about me. After that conversation, she stopped trying to negotiate. She sent one last message saying she hoped time would soften things. I did not answer. The rest of the fallout unfolded without my involvement. Friends chose sides quietly. Some distanced themselves from her. Some distanced themselves from both of us. Her workplace reassigned her after complaints surfaced about blurred boundaries. Nothing dramatic. Nothing cinematic. Just erosion. A month later, I moved into a new place. Smaller. Quieter. It felt earned. I ran into Anton once, weeks after everything settled. He looked uncomfortable, avoided eye contact, then apologized. Not for participating. For assuming. I accepted the apology without warmth or hostility. It no longer mattered. The last time I heard about Alina, it was through someone else. Qley had left entirely. The flexibility she valued had collapsed into instability. The people who had known but stayed quiet no longer felt obligated to protect her version of events. I did not feel victorious. I felt accurate. The moment she asked me to translate that topic, she believed she was safe. She believed control would hold. She believed timing was on her side. The message that arrived did not create the truth. It exposed it at the only moment when denial could not survive. That was the consequence that mattered most. Not loss, not embarrassment, exposure.